Hi, I'm Kevin, and this is my software engineering architecture explanation for what I just saw in the video. So I think one big thing that I got out of this video was that how important it is to actually construct or kind of think about what kind of architecture we want, or else things can get pretty messy and really complicated and confusing to be used. Um, yeah, I think there was a portion of what Dr. Dan said in here about about how we so the prescription architecture and the descriptive architecture, how like you see the description is like really messy, and like if we were trying to explain that to someone, where there's no concrete like paper or like understanding of how we're going to develop this, it goes all over the place, and it it becomes really difficult to upgrade or progress in the application afterwards. Um, and I like how he brought up the idea where like projects from like hackathons where we spend like around like 3 days implementing and creating, are something that we can't really push to a real life product in the future, just because how poorly they are constructed. Most of the time, we're just trying to push out code that works and allow the users to be using it particularly, and not really think about like, oh, what's the long run or long term of the project we're trying to do. Um, and then I went online and searched up some architecture patterns on what is it that Dr. Dan was talking about. Surprisingly enough, I actually know a couple of them. So in my workplace, I probably use a broker pattern, an event bus, and a model view pattern. And I kind of heard of layered client side server pattern and master slave before. Um, but I'll just go over them real quick on what I actually learned. So I think the layer pattern is just like or I forgot it was like an IO model or OS model. I forgot which one was it, but it's like we separate it by layers, by presentation layer, application layer, business logic layer, and data access layer. So then that they won't they don't need to be colliding half the time. Um, so I believe it's the OS model. If I can pull it up, yes, it is the OS model. So how we have these structures between application to physical. It's the same thing with what's going on here. Client side pattern. This is mostly for emails and sharing. So this is what is a client and a server. A client sends a request to the server replies back to the client using like a some type of port. Master slave. Master slave. I used this once during like a robotics challenge, where we attempt to solve having a robots pick up as many balls in this field as possible. So the master would just send out requests on, hey, get this ball, and the servers, which they're all identical to each other, do the same process, and they all on different locations, and they send back the balls individually. So yeah, I aside from that particular use, I don't think I ever seen a master slave be used in most computer architecture before. Pipeline is a filtering process from source to sink where a person takes in some sort of information, they constantly parse it, and it comes out. Broker pattern. Broker pattern is um, the process of taking data, and instead of having it the service directly on the client side, we use a broker which is like a serial bus. Right? I used Logic MQ before for this, but you just send the request and RabbitMQ will automatically distribute that to the server. It's based on a sender and a receiver. I believe it's called like a subscription line and a subscription handler. So the client sends it, and it just checks which server is listening, and then the server gets onto it and takes it. Peer to peer. I didn't really understand this one too much. It just seems like client to server or over. So didn't really touch into that. And then there is the event bus. So the event bus is just sending data to a channel on the service bus. So it's almost like the RabbitMQ scenario, but then in this case there's multiple, and multiple listeners can be listening onto each channel. Yeah. Model view controller pattern, and I think I'll stop here after this. But the model view control pattern is the idea of separating the model, the view, and the controller, like it's mentioned. The view is just the physical like look of it. The controller is what's handling the process, and the model is just the what's being sent to the query, particularly. So most of the time, what happens is that you send a certain input in the view. So if you're online or something and you type in your username, password, and it sends it to the controller then has to send whatever you send into a model folder, model file, and then the model file has sent back to the controller, and the controller sends that into the SQL. The SQL has to send it back to an entity version of it, or send it back into like an output version of a model, and comes back and sends it back to the view. Yeah. This is what I learned about our software architecture patterns. Thank you.